On a mild winter day in February 2024, I enjoyed a hike on an old railway on the west side of the Port Alberni summit. This is the Esquimalt and Nanaimo Railway's Port Alberni subdivision, and there hasn't been a train here since early 2002. Let me show you where I am on the maps. Here is the big picture. It's Vancouver Island on the west coast of British Columbia, and the red circle is the area just northeast of Port Alberni. Here's the railway map, and it shows two subdivisions. The Victoria subdivision snakes up the coast towards Courtenay, but I'm on the Port Alberni subdivision, which goes from Parksville on the right-hand side to Port Alberni on the left. And the red circle is the area of this hike. This location on my hike is near the east end of what used to be the mile 24.4 trestle, now a grade diversion. The trestle was commonly known as Stokes Trestle because it was very near to Stokes siding. Between 1911, when this subdivision was built, and 1971, this creek gully was spanned by a timber frame trestle. It was 39 spans, 586 feet long. In 1971, this trestle and two nearby similar ones were probably ready to be rebuilt, but instead the line was diverted in a tight curve around each of the gullies, and the trestles were dismantled. I'm looking for evidence of those old trestles. On this map, you can see that this location is east-northeast of the city of Port Alberni. The curved post-1971 diversions are pretty evident on this map here, mile 23.9, and the one I'm at, mile 24.4. And there was a third similar one, also done in 1971, at around mile 27.3. I love railway history on Vancouver Island, especially old routes that were later diverted, and so I enjoyed exploring this. So here at the east side of where the trestle started, I decided to climb down and try to walk across the edge of the gully, looking for evidence of the old pre-1971 trestle route. But I started a bit too soon. I was a bit too far east, and what I found, I think, was an old work road slope. I had to climb back up to the current grade, go on a bit further west, and then start again. The slope was steep, and I stuck to the edge as much as I could. There were a lot of rocks used to build up the new diverted railway grade. I call it new, but it's 1971, over 50 years ago. I continued to carefully work my way across the edge of the gully, shown here in this area of the map, and soon I came to the culvert. This is what the creek crosses through at the times of the year when there's actually water in the creek. I'm on this gully with a nice echo. I'll show you why. I'm where the Stokes Trestle used to be, roughly. There's the culvert that the creek crosses through. It's dry at the moment. And now I carefully continue crossing the gully westward. I'm somewhere here, seen in this map. I know, it's pretty general. Okay, so I continue walking carefully across the edge of the gully, and you can see some of my path in the bottom right foreground. Here again, I'm just working my way across, and you can see a bit of the gully depression. Here I am looking back, and you can see a bit of the slope on the left. A lot of loose rock, really tough, easy to break an ankle if you're not careful. Looking again where I'm headed, the top middle of the photograph is where I'm headed for. And again, looking behind me to get an idea of how steep the slope is. Continuing on in my direction, bottom right, looking at the photograph now, looks to be some rotted wood, and perhaps that was from the trestle. I didn't investigate that at the time. Here I am looking up the slope. Same scene, but wide angle. And the bottom middle looks to be a log, but it's a telegraph pole. And here it is looking back down towards it. Here's a better look at the telegraph pole. And continue to work my way upslope now. So now I'm on a steep upslope. I'm now at the west end of the gully as seen in this map, and the current railway line is above to the right of me. It's a steep slope that I'm climbing up, and I finally see something that I was looking for. Timber, evidence of old timber piles, or at least the abutment for the edge of the trestle. This is where I think the west abutment area of the Stokes Trestle was. And just up above me a bit is what I think is some timber. I'll get closer to that in a second, see if it is a piling, and see if that also was part of a piling, which would be persuasive evidence to me that this is the path of the Stokes Trestle on the west side. The west abutment is just at the top of this little hill. I've seen it from the top before. This is the first time I've come down here though. And this is where I am, the steep west edge of the gully. It's been fun. I've been pondering the Stokes Trestle for a few years now. Oh yeah, these are timbers. First I thought they were just the cut off stumps of timber piles for the trestle, but they appear to be trestle timbers, or part of a bent. That's what perhaps they are, the low part of a bent, which would make sense because this is where the slope starts to happen, and so the trestle comes down from above, and these bents just are taller and taller as we go across the gully through there. But for me, I'm enjoying this close-up view of these old timbers. Since 1971, they've been undisturbed. And there's another one above. Right there. For someone who likes old trestles, this is fun. Oh yeah, it's a bent. Just uncovered some of the moss. You can see the various bits of big timbers that were fashioned together for the what I'm going to call the foundation on a mud sill. And then there'd be one on the other side, which was just through there. And then rising above this would be timbers going vertical to support the trestle. And there's probably another one, remains of another one up there. And then we're at the top of the slope. So this is probably bent number 2 or bent number 3. I'm going to cover it back up with the moss. Well, I've spent about 90 minutes off trail, meaning off the railway, looking at this old trestle site and seeing this conclusive proof of a bent, a timber bent near the west end makes it all worthwhile. I love it when I find something that makes sense and supports my premise that this is the slope of the trestle. Yeah, nice seeing the old timber. And now above, and I've uncovered this one, and yes, it also is a big timber, so this was also part of a bent. And I'm looking up above, and I'm not at the top of this slope yet, so this would not be bent 2 or 3. This is maybe 4 or 5, perhaps. And I'm looking at what appears to be a piece of concrete underneath the timber. Perhaps this was the foundation for the bent. So those bents are just below me, And now looking up, yeah, it's still a ways up until I get to the top. There's a stump through there, the top middle, and that's where a telegraph pole is cut off. And there's the telegraph pole lying down, and you can see the pegs for the insulators at the end. Like that right there. No glass insulators, just these pegs. And this is where I've come up from. And that old telegraph pole is just a little ways down. And I'm at the top. The yellow square is flat ground at roughly the level of the current railway grade at the top of the west end of the Trestle Gully. And you can see below the yellow circle is a rocky outcropping, and that is a tall bluff cliff above this clearing area. Now I'm going to show you the old Jordan rail. So this is the Jordan rail, the inner guardrail on the Stokes Trestle. This is the end of it. You can tell because it's got that curving down part. And they just laid it here after 1971 when they dismantled the trestle. So I like to see it. And up there is the old bit of rail from Rhymney, and that rail was used as a makeshift telegraph pole at the top of the bluff. Here's the view from the top of the bluff looking down. At the base of the bluff near the bottom of the photo you can see the Jordan rail, and you can see the current grade in the background. And here you can see the very old rail that had been fashioned as a telegraph pole. Rhymney rail, that's an old one. So the Jordan rail, this clearing is where the original line went through, and through there is where it drops off and crosses the gully on the trestle. That's where I just came from. And through there is the current line. Blasted out in 1971 to hug the slope and bypass the gully. Did that in 3 different locations in 1971. It was a busy year. So through there on the right is where the original line would have gone through, across the gully, and there's the current line. And just around the corner here is where Stokes siding used to be. Thanks for watching this. Here's a rough drawing of where I walked from right to left.